Hi, my name is Alex Kennedy. To be honest with you, for me to be able to stand here today and introduce myself has been a journey of internal struggles and self-discovery. You see, the issue I've been fighting against my entire life is that I've been constantly labelled. I've been labelled by the society I live in, by the media I absorb, by the people I associate with, and most recently, and most disturbingly, I've begun to label myself. I mean, look at me. There's a multitude of them. Here's my most hated title: disadvantaged. You know, labels are funny old things, aren't they? And you know what I really dislike about them? They're kind of hard to pull off. And once they're there, you're always conscious of them. And just so you're all aware, technically I am from an area that you might describe as disadvantaged. And therefore, I obviously, from society's calculations, equate to being disadvantaged too. I'm from Dublin in Ireland, and I grew up in an area known as the Liberties. Now, don't let the French, romantic-sounding name, which translates as freedom, mislead or fool you. It's a very working-class area, and there are problems inherent within the community for sure. There's crime, homelessness, gangland fighting, and drugs. I'm not painting the prettiest of pictures here, am I? But why is it so ugly? Because I'm generalising. Generalisation, it's a force to be reckoned with, and in my case, it's helped attach these negative labels onto my beloved home, and therefore to me. The media especially seems to love to hone in on and capitalise on those elements of generalisations and uninformed opinions. There's very rarely any positive news coverage of my locality, and that hurts me, and it hurts the me I want to become. Yet people don't see every aspect of my reality. They read the label, but they don't bother to look inside. You see, the people in my community know everyone, and I mean everyone. It's nearly impossible to walk down the street without seeing someone you know and stopping to talk to them, and it's so refreshing. There are people who have known me since I was a baby, and every time I see them in the street I get told, "Would you stop growing? You're making me feel old." The older generation of residents all grew up together, learning the harsh realities as well as the joys of life. And so living so close to their own friends means their kids have grown up as a tight collective. And that, I believe, creates a community like no other, one that supports each other. For instance, my mother and father went to school with a few of my closest friends' parents, and that brings us closer together because we share a connected history. And you don't really find that in every community. And for the most part of my youth, I believed this connection bred the best type of individuals, ones who are confident and assured about who they are and where they're from. And that's how I felt, until I reached my teenage years. Until I reached an age where I became distinctly aware that before I even spoke to anyone, I was being judged. I was being judged with labels such as low achiever, troublemaker, wild, and delinquent. I became mute. My labels did the talking, and what I had to say didn't seem important anymore. You know, it's almost like the people who worship the label don't see the effects it has, especially on young individuals, like me. I don't want to be mute in my society, because I know this descriptor is certainly not true of me, my friends, or the people I associate with in my warm and open community. I once read a very powerful phrase by a guy called Descartes, and I think he was a really clever guy. I think, therefore I am, he said. I think, therefore I am. And it's super simple, but it's one that most young people, and indeed adults, can relate to. If we're told something about ourselves for so long, it sticks, right? Think of the concept. Take a moment to think of something you were told about yourself. A negative label. Maybe it was one you inherited when you were younger, one that you didn't choose. Now let me ask you, how does that make you feel? Happy? Sad? Confident? Vulnerable? It's an interesting one, because wherever or whoever you are in this world, I feel strongly that every single one of you has had a label. You all know what I'm talking about. But today, for the purpose of this talk, I want to focus on the negative labels, those similar to ones that I've been brandished with. Those that make you feel, well, not like you. And it's not good when you don't feel like you. It's hard enough to try and understand and figure out who you are at any age without knowing that someone else out there has an opinion on it. But we must ask ourselves, how do these labels even get there? Who places them upon our backs as a burden to carry? And most importantly, how do they stick so tight? In order to understand the complexities of the labelling game, we firstly need to explore the role of perception. You see, it's the role of perception and the tight glue of perception that sticks these pesky labels on. We live in a world where, from what I've seen in my 16 years of life, It's common to place people into these nice little boxes. Think about it. You're either someone or something. For example, let's look at some lazy categories used in the daily. Dumb American, drunk Irish, foreigner, rich or poor, or disadvantaged, which, as you know, is the label I've been brandished with. Why do we judge people in our society by the box they're in? And in my experience, there's very rarely just one label. There's another and another and another, until you just can't ignore them anymore. Disadvantaged equates low achiever, equates bad background, doesn't it? They all interconnect. One sticks and grows another, and suddenly the notion of being disadvantaged breeds a whole host of other names, other labels, and low expectations. And let me tell you something. These labels, well, they can weigh and wear you down. And most worryingly, they can make you ashamed. And a year ago, when I started this TED Ed journey, I realised that I was ashamed of my labels. Basically, I didn't feel worthy of such an opportunity. I mean, who would want to listen to me? What difference was someone like me going to make? I became aware that I wasn't being true to myself or who I was, and I didn't like it. I couldn't see what others could because my labels had blinded me from seeing my own potential. And it suddenly dawned on me one day that, you know what, actually, everyone has something to give. And as people, we sometimes, consciously or subconsciously, we let the label take over the full picture. We let labels cloud judgments and perceptions, and most importantly, how we see each other. Sometimes how we look at the label can affect the person it's rightly or wrongly attached to. So as I stand here in the TED Talks building, the disadvantaged girl from the rough part of Dublin, I can safely say that I am proud of myself. I'm proud of my working class label and for it giving me this opportunity to reach out to other individuals from other disadvantaged parts of the world. We are more than the label society imposes upon us. We are more than zip codes. We are people, and people with potential. People who should be heard and valued. We shouldn't feel less worthy because of where we come from, and ultimately, where we come from shouldn't hold us back. Throughout history, the oppressed, the labelled, have had to overcome the stigma attached to their unwanted titles. African Americans born into the slave trade had to fight for emancipation and equality. Women campaigned for a voice and a right to vote. Members of the LGBTQ+ community asserted their human right to love freely. My point being is, there unfortunately has and always will be labels in our world. I don't have the solution to prejudice or judgment. I don't think anyone does. But as history has proven, an altered mindset, a dismembered belief, a sudden insight can change the way we look at a label. And how do we do that? Well, we speak out. We talk about the label. We talk about the problem. Why? Because it encourages us to look inside and explore the contents of the box, rather than pass it by because we don't understand what's inside. Being born and raised in an area that can be classed as disadvantaged, or whatever your own negative label may be, can't define the you wish to become. The most important thing we must all do is share our labels, not hide them away. Labels create shame and take away our voices. Don't speak, I can read your label. That's such a wrong assessment of people, and it happens all over the world on a daily basis. Instead, I urge us all to recognise the hurt and hardship that comes attached to labelling, in order to create empathy and understanding amongst each other. I believe that by recognising the fact that society places labels on every single one of us, that we can all share the burden of labels together. And if we all focus on realising that, maybe it might make the label less sticky. And who knows, maybe it'll fall off. So I think it's time we revisit my earlier request of you all. I hope you've all remembered your own personal label. I want you to close your eyes. Visualise it. Think of how it made you feel and how it affected you going forward. It's time for us to speak out about these negative titles. It may hurt a little, but they're only serving to weigh us all down. We aren't defined by them. And hopefully, after this talk, you'll take more time and consideration before judging and generalising a person due to one. Now that I've spoken at length about the labels I was ashamed of for so long, I'd like to introduce you to the one that I'm most proud of, and the one I'd like people to recognise me for. This one says Alex, and for now, until you get to know the real me, that's the only label you need to know. Thank you.